If you're a person who has a particularly wonderful dad and you want to tell somebody about your father, what do? Do you tell just about his characteristics, or do you tell a story? Most people would probably tell a story. They'd say, oh, my dad used to take me camping. My dad used to take us fishing. My dad taught me how to play the piano. My dad taught me how to play baseball or softball or basketball or something. Maybe you'd say, oh, when my girlfriends would come over and we would have a slumber party, my dad would wake up early in the morning and he'd make pancakes and sausage and eggs and the whole spread just for us, and he'd be the cook in the kitchen. That'd be a great story of a wonderful dad. I used to have a friend who would tell a story that involved her dad saying that when she was in high school and it was particularly cold, frosty morning here in Georgia, her dad would get up early, go outside, crank up her car, scrape all the ice off her car, get her car nice and warm so that when she went out, she was ready to go to school and didn't have to do all that. That's a pretty good story of a great dad. Well, when Jesus wanted us to know about his father, he told a story. And the story he told is the story of the prodigal son. Now, we hear the title of the story and we think about the son in the story, but it's the father who's the hero of the story. The father's a wonderful, wonderful man. He loves both sons just the same. He's not like Isaac, who loved Esau more than Jacob. He loved both boys the same. And when the younger son came and pretty much demanded his inheritance early and essentially was saying, Dad, I wish you were dead, the father did not argue. He simply grants the son's request and gives him the money to go off, and the son goes off to a far distant country, and we know at least he squandered on prostitutes, probably all kinds of alcohol and gambling, and before long he was broke. He had nothing, and he began to realize what he had done. And Jesus said he came to his senses. In other words, he kind of snapped out of it and thought, what in the world did I just do with my life and all this money? And so he humbles himself and he gathers himself up and decides that he's going to go home and say to his father, I don't deserve to be your son. I have sinned. Just make me like one of your servants and I'll serve, and that'll be enough for me. Because he knew the servants of his father had plenty to eat, and he was hoping to just eat anything, including the pig food that he was looking at every day and the job that he had. But when Jesus wanted us to picture who his father really is, and he wanted us to understand the love of the Heavenly Father, this is what he says. In Luke 15, verse 20, he said, but while he, referring to the younger son, was still a long way off, his father saw him and he was filled with compassion for him, and he ran to his son, threw his arms around him, and kissed him. You know, there were Pharisees and tax collectors and sinners of all kinds listening to Jesus all at the same time when he was telling this story. And Jesus was letting the Pharisees know that the Father is the one who reaches out and embraces the sinner son. He's the one who embraced the sinners and the tax collectors. Even though they were ceremonially unclean, the Father didn't let that stop him. Jesus didn't let anything stop him. He reached out to the people and loved them. And it's just a beautiful, amazing story about who the Father is. And that's what Jesus wanted us to know when he told us the story. That's who God is. Now, we know that there's an older brother in the story, and the older brother's judgmental, and he's standoffish, and he's frustrated that the father is throwing this party for his brother. He doesn't want to go in. He thinks the father is being too elaborate, of course, and the father, he says, you didn't throw me a party, and he said, you never asked. Everything I have is yours. All of my love is yours, but we have to celebrate. Because your brother, he was lost, he's found. He was dead, he's now alive again. We have to celebrate. And that's who God is. He loves it when we come to him in that way. And one of the things I love about this story is it doesn't say that the younger son first, went and got some decent clothes and trimmed up his beard and took a shower and got some decent shoes. No, he just went home the way he was, a mess, a complete mess. And he went home repentant, and he went home with a humble heart. And here's the message for those of you who are out there who don't have a relationship with God right now, or maybe you once did and you've walked away, you stopped going to church, you stopped talking to God in prayer. You don't have to get yourself cleaned up. just go home. And you know how far it is from where you are to home? About this far. Like that, maybe? From your knees to the ground. Just go to your knees and humble yourself to God and say, Lord, I love you. Father, I love you. I want to come home. And you know what? You will feel the Father's embrace, and you'll know a Father's love in heaven. I love that when Jesus wanted us to know what his dad was like and what he's like, he tells us this story. It's a beautiful story. And you know what? Even if you didn't have a perfect or great, nobody has a perfect father, but you didn't have a great earthly father, you have the perfect Heavenly Father in him. I hope this helps you. Maybe you need to forward this to someone who's distant from God right now. Maybe that's what you need to do, because maybe you're close, but they're not. Just let them know that the distance home is not very far at all. Keep walking with Jesus. I'll do the same. I'll see you next week. And happy Father's Day.